Just 1 minute till stream.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you can see, we do not have a quorum yet present here in the council, so we will be just waiting for a couple more of our colleagues to arrive. There are 3 of our colleagues who have excused absences today, so we're only going to have 4 of us when folks get here, but we've got to wait for those 4. So apologies for the delay. We'll be with you as soon as possible.
So we currently have the votes to send everybody on a field trip.
Where are we going?
We could take all the youth in Durham right now and send them on a magical school bus field trip. We have the votes to do a lot right now. It's good to see Old Farm in the house.
Yes, ma'am. Can you speak to the staff? I mean, sure, if they'd like to speak to you, absolutely. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our former Mayor Pro Tem Cole-McFadden back to City Council. It's great to see you again.
So we think anybody's coming?
I am not getting a definitive from either the Freeman or the Holding gang.
Neither of them had excuse
No,
access.
Isn't this curious?
Yeah.
All right, quorum now being present, I'm going to call this meeting to order at 11:11 PM. This is the Thursday, 1:11 PM. This is the Thursday, April 20th, 2023 Durham City Council work session. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Mayor O'Neill, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and Javiera Caballero have all requested excused absences for today, and so I will conduct the roll call for the present members. Presiding Chair Johnson.
So, oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not used to being first. Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Holsey-Hyman.
Present.
Councilmember Williams.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any announcements by members of the council? All right, no announcements. Councilmember Williams.
Just real briefly, we this week hosted the, I cringe when I say it this week, the Raleigh-Durham Techstars Startup Week that was hosted in Durham. So the Durham Techstars with Raleigh accompanying Startup Week, it was quite the experience. Techies from all over. We're all over downtown utilizing our facilities, and folks from all over the world were here. Served as a guest speaker on policing and advanced technologies with Barry Friedman from the New York University Policing Project. It was a really balanced conversation, and just really excited how Durham has modeled and shaped progressive public safety. And it was an experience. And welcome to all of those folks that are now just leaving. It was great to have them here.
Thank you, Council Member. I'll make a quick announcement as well. You reminded me that last night, a number of us were fortunate to attend a documentary screening about the city's Heart Crisis Response Program. The documentary was developed by RTI in partnership with the folks at our Community Safety Department. They filmed during the first few months of the department's work last year, so it was a really incredible look at the start, like the initiation and the initial work of that program. And of course, now that we have almost an entire year looking back, we can see that the success that they saw in those first 3 months has continued. And we also were able to hear a panel of speakers, including our police chief, the department director, Ryan Smith, a number of the Heart staff, and the director of the film, Dilsey Davis. And that film will soon, we hope, fingers crossed, be available on YouTube. So encourage everybody to check it out as soon as it's available to the public. And we will now move on to priority items. Madam Manager, do you have any priority items?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Councilperson Johnson, Presiding Chair. I do have a few priority items for this afternoon. Agenda item number 7, which is the Ellerbe Creek Watershed Association Dedicated Nature Preserve Proposal Alternative. It is a 15-minute presentation that has been included today. Agenda item number 12, United Development Ordinance Text Amendment, Simplifying Codes for Affordable Development. This item is being referred back to the City County Planning Department. Agenda item number 15, Resolution and Adoption Policy for the Naming Rights of Publicly Owned Properties and Facilities, is a supplemental item that has been added. Agenda item number 16, McKissick Square Development Loan Commitment, is also a supplemental item that has been added to the agenda for today. And finally, agenda item number 17, Benefits Consultant and Broker Services Selection and Contract, is a supplemental item that has been added. That is all I have for this afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Can I have a motion to approve the manager's priority items?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Williams, seconded by Councilmember Freeman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. We'll go to our city attorney for any priority items.
Learning, thank you. Good afternoon, presiding officer and other council members and Manager Page. The City Attorney's Office does have a priority item today. We are requesting that the City Council hold a closed session at the conclusion of regular business. After this work session, the City Attorney requests that the following motion from City Council in order to recess to a closed session. The motion is to hold a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 for attorney-client consultation in order for the City Council to consider and give instructions concerning the settlement of claims in the following legal actions. 1, Department of Transportation v. Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority et al., case number 18 CVS 1932, filed in Wake County. The second case is Department of Transportation v. Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority et al., 18 CVS 3817, also filed in Wake County. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Is there a motion to approve the attorney's request for a closed session?
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved by Councilmember Williams, seconded by Councilmember Hyman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Attorney. And we'll go to the clerk for any priority items.
Good afternoon, Chair Johnson and council members. I do have a priority item. There have been revisions to a resolution. It is for the Day of Remembrance, and some edits have been made, and they will be distributed before the next council meeting for approval.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So should we should keep this item on the agenda? We don't need to refer it?
We do not need to
Okay.
refer it, yes.
Okay, so I don't think that we need to vote on your priority item. Okay, thank you. Moving right along with our administrative consent items. And I will just read the agenda, and if folks have items to pull, we'll pull them at this time. Our administrative consent items from the City Clerk's office. Item 1, approval of City Council minutes. Item 2, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission appointment. Item 3, under Finance Department, Item 3, March 2023 bid report. From our Public Works Department, Item 4, Street and Infrastructure acceptances. Under departmental items from our Audit Services Department, Item 5, Wire Transfer Process Performance Audit, March 2023. From Community Development, Item 6, Second Amendment to Amended and Restated Construction to Permanent Loan Agreement with CASA for 2702 North Duke Street, Bryan Place Apartments. From General Services Department, Item 7, Ellerbe Creek Watershed Association Dedicated Nature Preserve Proposal Alternatives, and we'll pull that item for presentation. From Solid Waste Management Department, Item 8, Amendment Number 2 to the contract with Waste Industries LLC for transfer station construction, operation, transport, and disposal services. From our Transportation Department, Item 9, Municipal Construction Agreement with NCDOT for Cornwallis Road and NCRR grade separation, TIP number P-5717. Under Waste Management Department, Item 10, Resolution to readopt Water Shortage Response Plan. In our public hearings from our Community Development Department, Item 11, Fiscal Year 2023-24 Draft Annual Action Plan needs public hearing, Annual Action Plan adoption, and grant project ordinances. Under City County Planning Department, Item 12, Unified Development Ordinance Text Amendment, Simplifying Codes for Affordable Development. That item has already been referred back to staff. Under public comment to be heard at 1 p.m., we have 13, Court Cole-McFadden. We also have several cards. Supplemental items under City Council's office, Item 14, resolution in support of the Day of Remembrance. Under City Manager's office, Item 15, resolution and adoption policy for the naming rights of publicly owned properties and facilities. There have been some changes to that resolution. I'd like to pull that actually for discussion. And under Community Development Department, Item 16, McKissick Square Development Loan Commitment, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, Affordable Housing Funds. And there no, actually, never mind, sorry. I thought there was someone signed up to speak on that, but there is not. Under Human Resources Department, Item 17, Benefits Consulting and Broker Services Selection and Contract. So I have items 7 and 15. Great. And we will move on to our public comment. And our first speaker is Mayor Pro Tem Cora Cole-McFadden. That's what I said.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Just, for performance's sake, please state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Cora Cole-McFadden, a lifelong resident of the Durham city, and I've been in Old Farm for over 50 years. We are here, and I have with me, stand up, Old Farm. Can I do that? I just did it, right, okay. And this is my team of residents in Old Farm. This past year or so has been a very trying and challenging time for us. Before I left City Council, I worked on the Durham Master Aging Plan, and so I know what the ingredients are. So we're here to let you know that when you read the plan, you will see that the city, nor the county, nor the school system is in compliance with this document, because it's supposed to ensure social inclusion. And you were on it too, Councilmember Monique. You were on one of the committees that drafted this. I saw your name a couple of places. But communication, lack of civic involvement, lack of respect for us as Black seniors in Old Farm. And I am going to have our speakers to share with you the kind of treatment we have received. Now, taxation without representation, of course, is not fair. And so as a senior citizen, let me just share this. I don't mind you not answering the phone for me as a senior citizen. What I would like to do then is for you to take me off the tax rolls. And you don't even have to worry about any seniors. Take all the seniors off the tax roll. That way you don't even have to be concerned with us. We'll be on our own. Isn't that right, seniors? That's right. And he's not in even Old Farm. He agrees with that. But I want my residents, my neighbors to come and share what the violations have been. And Gwen is the chair of our Public Relations Committee. So she will come and share for 3 minutes, and then 3 other people are sharing for 3 minutes. That's okay, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am. You just tell me what order you want them in, and that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you
I want
for,
Gwen, Tonya, Carolyn, Trudy, and I'll do the benediction if there's time.
thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Cora Cole-McFadden. Our next speaker is Gwen Penix.
Right.
Welcome. Please state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Gwen Penix. I am a resident of Old Farm for the last 48 years, along with my husband sitting over there. I am reading to you a letter written by Mary Vickers. She can't be here because she has had surgery. And the author of this letter has a BS in biology. She is a registered nurse from UNC. This would be her 2nd degree, a graduate of Duke University. She's registered medical technologist, and also her areas of specialization are oncology, radiation therapy, and chemotherapy. So she is indeed an expert in her field. On January 2nd, Mary Vickers received a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers. That letter contained a map of the location of the proposed new Northern High School, and it showed a portion of the Old Farm neighborhood that would be impacted. Upon close examination of this map, it showed that the south end of Old Wells Street was going to be open to provide entry into the school for buses, pedestrians, and bicycle traffic. On January 7th, 2021, homeowners also received a letter from the Durham County Board of Adjustment about a hearing on January 26, 2021. This hearing was being held because of Durham Public Schools. And they had requested a minor special use permit, which would allow a school to be located in a neighborhood, our neighborhood. Neighborhoods received this notification just 17 days before they would be able to speak. Under safety, the streets in Old Farm do not have any sidewalks or bicycle lanes. Routing traffic through our neighborhood would have a detrimental impact on the safety of neighbors who use our streets daily for physical activities, as well as the JFK Towers, which houses the elderly and disabled. Buses powered by diesel fuel release fine particles of carbon, toxic chemicals, and gases. Benzene, a compound of diesel exhaust, is classified as a known human carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. Their studies show that benzene causes several forms of leukemia and increased lung cancer. With a minor permit use, it is not required that neighborhoods have to be informed by the group requesting the permit. This is not required because a school does not have to do rezoning. The Board of Adjustment made us in Old Farm feel dismissed as tax-paying citizens, and the Vice Chair, Mark Meadows, turned the meeting over to DPS. Do I get to finish my sentence, or I'm done?
You can finish your sentence.
Okay, thank you. Turn the meeting over to DPS Attorney Lindsay Smith, acting as chairperson. Just as this quietly happened to Old Farm as a neighborhood, it could happen to your neighborhood. And this should spur us to go to the polls and vote to choose our elected members carefully and pass legislation to protect homeowners and neighborhoods from this type of discrimination.
Thank you for being here. Our next speaker is Tonya Exum-Costin. Welcome. Please state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Tonya Exum-Costin. I am the treasurer of the Old Farm Neighborhood Association. I am speaking on behalf of our president, Trey Gilmore, and the executive board of our neighborhood association. Trey and I both were raised in Old Farm, and we have returned and currently live there as adults. So we have been in Old Farm for over 50 years, both of us and our families. So we thank you for the opportunity to share our concerns today. Old Farm is a neighborhood of nearly 500 homes established in the late 1960s. And it's made up of multiple generations of predominantly black and brown people. Many of the initial residents still live in our neighborhood, making it also an aging population, as Ms. Cora Cole-McFadden has stated. The Northern High School project and the proximate neighborhood access raises several serious health, safety, and peaceful living concerns for the over 1,000 Durham residents who occupy Old Farm. Allowing any access for thoroughfares into our neighborhood and not providing any physical or impenetrable barriers between the school and our homes is problematic for several reasons. So the first reason is the gun violence incidents involving and resulting in injuries and deaths of DPS high school students. As I'm sure you're all aware of the Hillside High School students who were involved, the incident involving the Riverside and Lakeview students, and then on the same day that the Riverside shooter appeared in court, there were 2 additional incidents involving a 14 and a 15-year-old shooter. So this is problematic. As of March 24th of this year, 15 people under the age of 18 have been shot in Durham. The next reason is the steady rise of school shootings in the entire United States. And the steady increase of gun violence in Durham, a study was done in 2020 that showed that there were 66% more shootings victims in Durham than the previous year. Juvenile offenses overall increase, nearly 24% in violent crimes. And the fourth reason we have listed here is the recent TikTok car thefts. These young people called the Kia Boys. And during the past week in Old Farm, we've had at least 2 vehicles stolen as a result of this. So social media crimes and poor choices committed primarily by high school age juveniles. So these are reasons that we feel this is not a good move to have a school and have it open to our neighborhood. So in prior decades, it may have been good to have a school in walking distance for students. However, in this day and age, it is not. Given the gun violence and illegal activities, especially those perpetuated by high school age students, it's downright reckless to build a school that provides thoroughfare directly into the residential neighborhoods.
Ma'am, your time is up. Thank you.
All right.
Our next speaker is Carolyn Young. Welcome. Please state your name, and you have 3 minutes as well.
Thank you. My name is Carolyn Young. I stand before you wearing many hats. I've lived in Old Farm for 47 years. I'm a member of the Old Farm Neighborhood Association, was one of the 5 speakers to address the Board of Adjustments concerning the bringing of buses down Seven Oaks Road, and was one of the 3 female appellants seeking justice for this injustice. During that meeting with the BOA, my testimony was not moved to be stricken from the record by the DPS attorney. I was upset that 3 of our 5 testimonies were. It hardly seems fair that DPS had at least a couple of years to amass its information. We only had about 17 days and only had that because one neighbor happened to see the bus information on a Corps of Engineers letter that all concerned neighbors didn't even receive. Excuse me. Since the day of that BOA meeting in January of 2021, I've been on a mission. I became an appellant. We went to court because we felt the minor special use permit put Old Farm at a disadvantage. The community supported us as we hired an attorney and went all the way to the Court of Appeals. We lost and we feel wronged. There was no respect for the safety nor the sanctity of our neighborhood. No one has put themselves in our shoes. Would you want these buses coming into your neighborhood? Would you like to have to worry about the risk of cancer from the bus emissions? Would you like to have one of only 2 main egresses into your neighborhood packed with buses so you can't get in or out of your own neighborhood? How can you just turn a blind eye to such injustice? We are prepared to call local, state, and federal attention to this issue. We hope that you will work with us to keep your voters safe. After all, isn't that what you, as elected officials, are supposed to do? And I thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Trudy Harris-Adillo. Welcome. Please state your name, and you also have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Trudy Harris-Adillo, and I'm a resident of over 40 years in Old Farms, where I raised my daughter, who attended Northern High School. Initially, I was raised in Bragtown. And I remember when my parents were politically involved, and when we were trying to get organized to take action to deal with racism in Durham, I remember going to precinct meetings where they had already had the meeting before the meeting. And they also went on about doing what they wanted to do anyway, down to this. The times have changed, but the playbooks remains the same. And so if you want to have community engagement, diversity, respect seniors, then you're going to have to do more than talk. You got to put the action into that whole arena, because we are dealing with safety issues, we are dealing with health issues, we are dealing with property devaluation because of all of these factors that's going on. However, you come to us and you ask us for your vote, for us to vote for you, and we do, but we don't get represented. Who is advocating for us? Who is speaking for the issues of not just black and brown people, but historically it's been black people? And don't tell me this would have happened in Forest Hills. It would not have happened. We want you to help us. We want you to speak for us and do what you can to turn this situation into a win-win situation for Old Farms community as well as Northern High School. It can be done, there's a solution. So in order for that to occur, we need to have true, active community engagement, which we've never had. So with this, I bid you your desire and your willingness. I hope to see that we don't have Old Farms turn into a thoroughfare for school buses to come through and devalue the property that we have and the safety of our community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is James Chavis. Welcome. Please state your name, and you will also have 3 minutes. You each get 3 minutes. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry, we can only do 3 minutes per speaker.
Okay, hello, I'm Natalie Balcom. I am a homeowner, well, property owner in Old Farms, and I also, I pay taxes in Old Farms as well. And she wants me to say there was a whiteboard meeting.
Lack of diversity on the Board of Adjustment.
Oh, there's a lack of diversity on the Board of Adjustment, and we would like for that to change. Anything else?
Just good enough for right this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, please go over to the clerk over here and fill out a yellow card, just for the record.
All right.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mr. Chavis. Welcome. Please state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is James Chavis. I live at 2813 Ash Street, Apartment B. I am coming to make sure that this SCAG that we had our meeting last Saturday, which it did not go right. I sent a copy to each one of you all, an email, okay? And I also gave the clerk one to give you because that meeting didn't go like it was supposed to. So this is meeting number 2. And I know Sarah said she could not be there, and I know Chadwell said he could not. But we need a representative from the planning department to answer the questions like we wanted. We want a Q&A, like the mayor said, answer to the question of the changes that's been put forth to them on the document. Whether you for or against, this meeting is open up to everyone. The meeting will be still at Holton at 10 o'clock a.m. on the 2nd floor in the auditorium. We know now that we got until August, and I'm so glad you all are here. And what y'all are talking about, we've been talking about it. So I hope you all will get involved, those that can come this Saturday, and find out what SCAG, if these be changed, how more effective it's going to be on y'all community, because they are pulling a wool on us. And as we say, some of I saying, going on record, city council members, county commissioners, some of them was on the bus, okay? Because guess what? They can't do it unless somebody else is behind it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwell. We have one speaker online, Ms. Jacqueline Wagstaff.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, council members, and good afternoon, Cora Cole-McFadden, Mayor Pro Tem former, in the Old Farms neighborhood. Just want to let you know that I stand in unity with you on this matter. It's not the first time I've heard this, and it probably won't be the last. But I'm going to go back to something that former Mayor Pro Tem McFadden said: taxation without representation. Part of our problem is that we continue to support people that come to your neighborhood and come to your community and beg for your vote, and then get in office and forget that they were put there by the people. Unfortunately, we have a council now with very few people on the council that actually want to represent the people of Durham. And that's the unfortunate part. And it has been said in many meetings when groups like yours come down here to these meetings and try to advocate for things that affect them in their community, that, you know, you shouldn't be coming down here. There were quotes made about the people down here that are speaking against things. They have a roof over their head. So I guess that's a prerequisite for not being able to come down to council and speak if you live in a house and you have a roof over your head. There were things said like 1 or 2 people don't represent the whole community, which I believe to not be true, because you have people like Mr. Chavis who represents PAC 1. So when he comes down there, he doesn't have to bring all 100,000 people down there. He can come down there and speak on behalf of the PAC 1 community. But just to let you know that I'm hoping that exactly what Mr. Chavis said, that some of the people from Old Farms, if they can come out Saturday, participate in this SCAD, because I know that y'all are dealing with the Northern High School building of the school, but also this SCAD is going to have a major impact if the Gang of 4 decides to vote on it. It's going to have a major impact on the life and your livelihood and how you live and how things are built around you. So it will only get worse. So I'm hoping that you will come down. And at this time, I'm hoping that number 12 is not on the agenda. I came to speak on SCAD, but I think Monday y'all decided that you weren't gonna be making a decision on it until way into May. So I'm just gonna leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment, and we will move on to our pulled items. Our first pulled item is number 7, Ellerbe Creek Watershed Association Dedicated Nature Preserve Proposal Alternatives. And I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Fleischer. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. I'm David Fleischer from the General Services Department. Thank you for having me. We are presenting to you this afternoon regarding a request from the state of North Carolina to designate and dedicate a portion of a city-owned property as a dedicated nature preserve. This property was identified and nominated by our local group, the Ellerbe Creek Watershed Association, commonly referred to as ECWA, and representatives from both the state and from ECWA are here with us today in chambers, as well as our departmental partners from the Planning Department, from the Transportation Department, and from the Water Management Department. As a brief background, in January of last year, representatives from the state's Natural Heritage Program, along with representatives from ECWA, appeared before City Council to present a proposal that the city dedicate 284 acres of city-owned property to become a dedicated nature preserve, or DNP. The proposed area for dedication is located adjacent to the city's solid waste landfill, the city's closed solid waste landfill off of East Club Boulevard at Camden Avenue, and I'll show you where that is on the next slide. The stated purpose of creating the DNP is threefold. First, to protect the nearby waterbird or heron rookery and nesting area. Secondly, to protect the area around Ellerbe Creek generally. And thirdly, to protect the existing slope forest on that property. This map shows where the property we're talking about as proposed for dedication is located. It is next to or west of the former city landfill site. It is also just north of the North Durham Water Reclamation Facility, or the North Durham Water Plant. Just for context, the Solid Waste Transfer Station and Recycling Center are on the lower right of this picture. They are underneath the label, the green label that says North Durham Water Reclamation Facility. In exploring concerns that the city would have in responding to the DNP request, staff began by scheduling site visits that were conducted with team members from both the state and ECWA. Our staff also contacted other municipalities as to their experiences with the DNP process, while we also conducted over 25 meetings with our partner departments at the city to determine and identify concerns that they might have. Those meetings included personnel from the city attorney's office, from the General Services Department, from Neighborhood Improvement Services, from the Department of Parks and Recreation, from the City County Planning Department, from the city's Public Works Department, from the Solid Waste Department, from our Transportation Department, from the Department of Water Management, and from the Metropolitan Planning Organization, referred to as the MPO. Staff worked alongside the Water Management Department after some of those meetings to map out the existing infrastructure in the area in question. And that existing infrastructure is shown on this slide. It's a little difficult to see as yellow and green lines that represent the water or sewer lines in that area. Staff also worked with our Transportation Department to identify any roads that could be foreseeable to be built in this area. And finally, for this slide, I'll go into it a little further on subsequent slides. We obtained estimates as to what would the cost to the city be of participating in the state's DNP program. We conducted due diligence, and the aim of that due diligence effort by the city staff was to identify and explore impacts to both existing and future city operations and infrastructure, as well as to determine what obligations and restrictions would be imposed upon the city's property, and also to begin, as I mentioned, to estimate the cost to the city of participation in the state's program. During our due diligence, several issues arose that needed to be addressed. We identified that the originally proposed boundary of the area to be protected needed to be pushed back from both the closed landfill site as well as from the North Durham Water Reclamation Facility border or area. Concerns arose that we needed to make certain that water management could have access to maintain existing infrastructure and to upgrade that infrastructure as needed in the future. I've listed out the types of infrastructure, just a representative example, that are existing currently on the city's property. There's existing and proposed upgrades to 2 force mains or pressurized sewer lines. There's multiple gravity sanitary sewer lines on the property. There are some gas probes that are used for monitoring of the landfill site. And also there's some water sampling wells on the property that are used for that same purpose of monitoring the landfill as it settles and ages. Per the state program contains both what are called primary and buffer areas that allow different types of uses on the property. In short, the primary areas would severely restrict any city infrastructure to be built or changed or upgraded in those areas. Also, management of the preserved area would need to be captured in a management plan, which would impose state standards on the city's property for management and maintenance. Also, the proposal may entail dedication of some portion of what could become developable land. This part of the property is adjacent to the rookery, kind of in the upper right of the map you're looking at. And in eventual negotiations with the state and representatives from ECWA and our other partners, the city may elect to exclude a portion of that 35-acre area from protection while still maintaining a buffer around the birds' nesting sites, or the rookery, what we refer to as the rookery area. Lastly, we acknowledge that the protection of the land will assist the city in several manners. our goals like increasing tree canopy metrics, of getting credits towards compliance with the Falls Lake rules. And I'd like to mention that protection of the property can afford the city to receive grants or grant matches related to that protection. Those funds could be used for the due diligence necessary to enact protection of the property, or it could be used in payment of what will be future stewardship costs for the property. Also, in conducting our due diligence, an additional issue beyond the items I've already mentioned was identified in the internal city departmental meetings. The Northern Durham Parkway is listed on the comprehensive transit plan as a future parkway or road across this area of Durham. The planned Northern Durham Parkway bisects the city's property in the midst of the area proposed for protection. We've received a recommendation from the city's transportation department that the existing reservation for the Northern Durham Parkway be maintained consistent with the MPO plans on the comprehensive transportation plan. And finally, like many other roads that are on these types of plans, I should mention that the parkway is not currently funded. One more thing to mention is that the Northern Durham Parkway is shown on the map you're looking at as a red line. I kind of drew that red line in darker that's bisecting the subject area on this picture. It's difficult to see, but the route of the Northern Durham Parkway can be seen going down to the lower right and up to the upper left of that red line as kind of a peach-colored line on that map. It's important to note that after the future Northern Durham Parkway was identified as being in this area, we approached the state, and the state and ECWA indicated that that road and the area for protection could coexist, so that their proposal was revised so that there would be an 800-foot carve-out for the future road to exist, and that will provide the city with the flexibility needed for unknowns in planning to build that road and opening it. We'll see that revised area on another slide in just a moment. As far as costs are concerned, costs to the city, we've estimated an approximate $100,000 placeholder for entry into the state's program, as the city's property would need to be surveyed. That would be the lion's share of the cost, about a good $50,000 to survey 12 large parcels of city-owned property. There would be additional typical costs for real estate deals like this, including a real estate appraisal, attorney's title work, for additional consulting fees to bring the project across the goal line, and perhaps even costs for signage and markings on the city property denoting where the protection begins. One important note to include as far as costs are concerned is that in our conversations with representatives from the state and ECWA, they've indicated that there could well be monies or grants available that could pay for some of the costs delineated on this slide, with the acknowledgement that that funding is not in hand at present, but could be available in the future. I'd also like to mention that once we complete the due diligences that are mentioned on this slide, it will take about 9 or 12 months to go through the state's process to get into one of their programs. As a result of the meetings that were convened here at the city, as well as the due diligence we performed, feedback was provided to the representatives from the state and to the representatives from ECWA. And they responded positively to the city's various requests by providing a significantly revised change in the size of the area proposed for dedication. They reduced the scope of what's being asked of the city from 284 acres, shown on the left, to 215 acres. Note that the proposal, I just want to reiterate, is actually not from ECWA, but rather from the state of North Carolina's Department of Natural and Cultural Resources Natural Heritage Program. That's a mouthful. These maps serve to reflect the difference from the originally proposed 284 on the acres on the left to the 215 acres on the right. The original map on the left shows the entire area being sought for protection, and that actually included some callouts for specific forested areas to be slated for restoration. However, the map on the right is a much more simplified proposal. It shows not only the significant reduction of acreage, but also It shows the primary areas, what are considered by the state's program to be primary areas for protection, and then buffer areas for protection. The buffer areas obviously allow more use by the city of its property. I'll elaborate and explain just a bit more about the differences in the areas proposed for protection in a moment, but just as a side note, the picture on the right depicts that carve-out that I mentioned previously for the Northern Durham Parkway. It's a blank area between the top kind of cap area and the rest of the property. And again, that is an 800-foot carve-out that we could utilize for a future, for the future Northern Durham Parkway. Additionally, in the right-hand picture, the darker hatchings are what are called primary areas for protection, which are more restrictive, as they're meant to protect the more critical portions of our property. The areas of lighter hatching are those buffer areas I mentioned. Any needs that the city may have in the future for water management infrastructure or for trails use would be allowable in the buffer or secondary areas, provided that that use isn't within 100 feet of the border of a primary area. In practice, if the city chooses to participate in the state DNP program for protecting this property, those primary areas would be strictly, severely restricted from any use by the city in the future. And the method for either amending a portion of the primary area or removing a portion of the primary area would require an approval action by the governor and the Council of State. And to date, we have not been made aware of that having occurred in other municipalities. The secondary area, or the buffer area I refer to, is more lightly hatched in that picture on the right. It gives the city the rights to perform the actions we can foresee at that time. The state would require, as part of our management agreement or management plan, for those areas to be, those uses in those areas to be captured so that we can include it in the management plan and notate it for the future. Some examples of local properties that have been included in the state's DNP program for dedication include the Jordan Lake Game Lands, the Eno River State Park here in Durham, and the Eno Conservation Preserve, which is a property, incidentally, that's owned by the Eno River Association, and it's located right on the Eno River at where it crosses Guess Road. In staff's recommendation, which we'll get to in a moment, we'll talk about a different approach to protecting the property through registration of the property as a state registered heritage area. Examples of properties locally that have been registered include the Bennett Place Forest, the Duke Forest, and other properties listed, including Penny's Bend. These examples are illustrative of the types of properties that could be or are included in the two different programs. Comparing some advantages of the two different programs, that being the Dedicated Nature Preserve, or DNP, and the state's Registered Heritage Area program, reveal substantial similarities. Going point by point briefly, the DNP versus the registration provides more permanent protection that is much more difficult to undo by future city councils or by other governing bodies. Moving to the second bullet point, the DNP places the property on the U.S. Geological Survey maps. That provides utilities and other adjacent or nearby developers with notice that this is a protected property. Both of the approaches, I'm moving to the third bullet, both of the approaches fulfill the open space needs called for in the draft future comprehensive plan, which has identified the majority of this property involved to be either recreation and open space already. Again, the DMP program, moving to the next bullet, provides for permanent or perpetual protection, while the registration option could be removed in the future. However, the final bullet on the right also indicates that the city and not the state would retain control of city property for unforeseen future needs if we moved towards registering the property in the Heritage Area program. I'll be a little briefer on this slide in comparing some of the concerns we had in each approach. The DNP's restrictions on these primary areas would be perpetual. If the city had any unforeseen uses for our property, those restrictions could only be removed from protection, as I mentioned, by action of the governor and the Council of State. The DNP would have some costs involved, which the registration would not have. But as I mentioned previously, some of those costs could be able to be covered through grants. Also, in the DNP program, the city would have a responsibility to enter into a management plan in which the state would require the city's compliance. There would be ongoing maintenance and management expenses, and also, of course, the city would lack flexibility in use of its property. By comparison, in the Registered Heritage Program, as I've mentioned, the protection could be undone by future governing bodies or future city councils, and the city could be more easily pressured by nearby developers to remove some restrictions on the property so that nearby development can occur. After all of the considerations that I presented were taken into account, our team ultimately identified 3 recommendations that are before you today, Council. Our recommendation seeks to achieve the goals of the state, the city, and EQA of protecting the property. Staff's recommendation is for City Council to direct us not to participate in the state's DMP program, but rather to work with the state in a 2-step process to designate the property as a registered heritage area, and also to, in accordance with that, to amend the city's code of ordinances so that protections are in place. Doing so would provide the flexibility for future use of the property by the city as is needed, while also accomplishing the aims or goals of all parties involved to protect the property. Furthermore, the city would retain control of its property in our recommendation, in which is the main reason that the Registered Heritage Area program is being recommended. The second part of our recommendation is to utilize a self-directed action to protect the property by making changes to the Code of Ordinances. This is similar to what has been done in the past to protect, to provide protections of the city's reservoirs at Little River and at Lake Mickey. This could be accomplished with the assistance of partners like the state and like EQA, in that we could garner input from them and use that to draft the section of the ordinance of the City Code of Ordinances that I'm referring to. The third recommendation is simply made to provide flexibility to achieve these outcomes pending all this further discussion, negotiation, and specific identification of the property involved. And lastly, note that once negotiations between the parties are completed, we would come back before City Council to bring forward a final recommendation with specific details as to the protections that we finalized in our negotiations. We've also identified a few alternatives that are not being recommended by staff. One option, of course, is to do nothing and maintain the status quo. That is simply not being recommended by staff. The second alternative would be for council to direct staff to further explore a full dedication of the property into the state's DMP or Dedicated Nature Preserve program. That is also not being recommended at this time, because as that alternative that alternative would give the city extremely limited use of its property, and that we're concerned about unforeseen uses or potentialities for the property, especially related to the landfill site that may require additional gas probes, wells, or other infrastructure to monitor any changes to the plume of the landfill as it settles and ages. And lastly, any needed removal or change in use of property, as I've mentioned, from the primary areas of anything preserved in the state's DMP program would be onerous and would require the actions by the governor, as I've mentioned. City staff is here from the various departments, as well as representatives from both the state and EQA to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I did want to hear from EQA specifically and to hear about their thoughts on that plan.
We have Ricky White from EQA here to speak.
Thank you and welcome.
Hey, y'all. Thank you so much, council members, for letting me speak. We, first of all, really appreciate working with Gina and David on this, and especially over the last few months. Like they said, we brought this to council in January of over a year and 3 months ago. So we're excited to finally get to this point where we can talk about it. We feel like we were very responsive to city staff's concern around the landfill and other things, and that's why the boundary of the entire dedicated nature preserve proposed did get reduced. So I feel we've addressed a lot of the concerns. I think the one big concern that staff and EQUA have a difference of opinion on is the permanent conservation part. So we have a goal in the new comprehensive plan to conserve 30%, permanently conserve 30% of the land in Durham for conservation purposes. We're not even close to that, and we don't have really anyone within the city or even the county that's like pushing that. The city owns around 800 acres along that section of Ellerbe Creek. We're asking for a little more than 200 acres to be conserved permanently. Although we appreciate the step of a registry approach, which the staff is considering and proposing to you all, the whole point of permanent conservation is for it to be permanent. We want to prevent future folks from coming in and developing this section of the property, which is 80% wetland, by the way. There's not a whole lot that you can do with this. And if you did do something with it, you'd be pretty irresponsible in terms of if it's affordable housing or housing, the residents are going to suffer from being in a floodplain. Or if it's filled, water quality downstream is going to suffer, and it's going to be detrimental to Falls Lake downstream. So anyway, my point is that we would really love to have this as a dedicated state nature preserve. We don't think it's onerous for the city because this is an area that is very isolated. And a lot of you have been out to the Heron Rookery. You know how amazing a place it is. It is truly a gem for Durham, and we're excited about the idea of protecting it permanently and eventually opening it to the public so that everybody can enjoy this part of Durham nature. Okay? And I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has them.
Thank you. And I just wanted to kind of get feedback from staff regarding moving forward with the way your recommendation was with the permanent preservation in place with the state. What would be the difference? So just because it's essentially the second alternative.
Mm-hmm. We feel that our suggested or recommended solution can provide good protection for the area. If we amend the code of city code of ordinances to have a section that specifically protects this property, it would be a rare occurrence for a future city council to want to undo that. I don't think, as Ricky mentioned, I don't think that future city council would say we want to develop this as affordable housing or housing, because as he mentioned, it's essentially floodplain property. My biggest concern, of staff's biggest concern, was needs that could be unforeseen for water management, for a water pipe or a sewer line or something like that, or even some sort of trail or some sort of access, something like that, is more what we're trying to avoid by suggesting not participating in the state's program. It's retaining local control, essentially, but providing the same protections.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you, council member. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Yeah, Madam City Manager, did you want to say something?
Hearing no other comments, as you know, this was a presentation item, but it remains on the agenda because it is actually asking council to provide direction to staff. Staff has provided its recommendation, and so we would be looking for specific guidance on whether or not the council is directing staff to proceed with its recommendation or one of the alternatives. Even though we know it is not a final decision, but a lot of work goes in when we leave these spaces in order to pursue next steps.
I understand. So this will be on our Monday agenda. So my recommendation would be to put it on GBA and have a discussion then when more of our colleagues are available.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Fleischer, appreciate it. Our next pulled item is item number 15, the resolution and adoption policy for the naming rights of publicly owned properties and facilities. I pulled this item and just had one question. Hi.
Good afternoon, City Council, Bertha Johnson, Deputy City Manager.
Thank you so much. Is there a particular case that is the impetus for bringing this policy forward at this time, or are we just trying to get ahead of it?
We have had some inquiries about a naming rights policy that came to us in Durham County, and that's when we realized we do not have a policy. Durham County has a policy and they're reviewing it. It was adopted in 2016. We also checked with Raleigh. I think Aaron Miles, who worked on this from the city attorney's office, also benchmarked some other cities like Asheville, and we do not have a policy, and so we thought it would be important for us to have a policy for future use.
Great, thank you. Have those inquiries been about anything specific that folks were interested in renaming, or just general question about whether it could be done?
Both, yes. The one question was about how do we name a facility, or how do we honor a former elected official or a significant person in the community. So it wasn't about a specific facility or space. It was just about what is our process. And we know we have a process for Parks and Recreation for, their facilities, but we did not have a general policy for city facilities.
Gotcha. Thank you. I look forward to some interesting proposals from our residents about renaming some of our facilities.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that is,
One more question, Deputy City Manager Johnson, sorry. Would this include street names, or is that something different?
That is something different.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. That is our final pulled item. We do have one board nomination from our clerk.
Good afternoon, Madam Presiding Chair and council members. The Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission appointment for the category of at-large resident is Jeffrey M. Baklachuk. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we'll go to our city manager to settle the agenda.
Thank you very much. I do have for your agenda for consent items 1 through 6 and items 8 through 10 and items 14 through 17. For general business agenda, I have item number 7, and for GBA public hearing this time, item number 11.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Moved by Councilmember Williams, seconded by Councilmember Hyman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Approved unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. Do we have any other matters this afternoon? Councilmember Freeman.
Just a note about the gun violence resolution. I just want to appreciate council colleagues for accepting it on this agenda so that we can get it done by May 1st and be ready. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Yeah, real quick. I just wanted to say that, and this is sort of like a moment of personal privilege for those who are watching. Again, I've said it before, this role is really tough, and it is a very thankless role. And as we try to focus heavily on the people's business, we do take a lot of personal attacks, and that is what it is. For the general public, if we're not necessarily responding to accusations or any of those things, it doesn't mean that we aren't listening. It just means that we're trying to just stay the course. Lately, there's been a lot of personal attacks on council colleagues, including myself. We have had pictures taken of us during moments of silence to say we're asleep. There have been, all types of accusations and allegations, and nothing has been proven, and this is for everybody. I just would ask the general public to just have grace as we try to do what we were elected to do. I don't recall a single person on this council stating a for or against on the SCAD document, or usually any document before it comes before us, yet that narrative has been put out there. So there are folks that intentionally try to sow discourse. And there are almost 300,000 people within the city limits here. And it's amazing how few people can cause such discourse. So I just want to say to the general public that we are trying to do at the best of our ability the people's work. We feel your gut punches, and we intentionally usually ignore you if you're trying to sow negative discourse. So me speaking personally, I hear you, I see you, and if we're not trying to fight for the better good here, you won't be at the top of my priority list, but I will continue to be committed to the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other matters? Great. Thank you, everyone. I will declare this meeting adjourned at 2:17 p.m.
We have a closed session. We need to.
Oh, right. Sorry. It's not adjourned. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freeman, seconded by Councilmember Williams. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I think that was everyone. Motion approved unanimously. We are now in closed session. Let me go upstairs. What now? Oh, having